times I would just start talking and then I'd have to slow down.
Yeah,
sorry.
down, yeah.
I have faced more problems
Yeah.
in conversation.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Peter. This is Mustafa here.
Hiya, Mustafa.
I don't remember, I think we don't met before anywhere else, but as Salih Chepni said, I also graduated from University of York in England.
Okay.
It was 2001. I used to have a colleague, Declan Kennedy, who did PhD at the same time together with me from Ireland, University of Cork. He's working right now in the University of Cork in Ireland.
Okay, UCD, yeah, okay.
Declan Kennedy.
I
don't know the name.
I am a little bit old. That's why my supervisors probably passed away.
Oh, shit.
years pass, yeah. Yes, I will introduce to you the Dr. Peter Tierman. Dr. Peter Tierman, lecturer and researcher in Enterprise Education, Ireland. Today, he will talk about entrepreneurship in the Irish education system. When I examine his CV, his background, actually, he mostly studying about entrepreneurship programs, their teaching and their planning in their country and in abroad. Therefore, I can say that he is really expert in entrepreneurship concept. Today, he will give you about some lessons from their country. I hope we can understand his message and we can also follow the same way in Turkey. Welcome, Dr. Peter Tierman. Now you can start your speech, please. Thank you very much for the beginning.
Excellent, and thank you very much for the kind introduction. Thank you for highlighting my expertise in a way that now makes me feel under pressure that I live up to your expectations. So I hope that what I present today will be of interest to everybody here. What I have tried to do is, I would hope that this is the beginning of a conversation between myself and my colleagues in Ireland and colleagues in Turkey around potential collaborations, potential links, what works in our country, what works in your country, and any synergies or anything that we can do to support each other in terms of entrepreneurship and enterprise education. So what I've tried to do today is I wanted to hopefully provide a snapshot or an overview of what is the current state of play of entrepreneurship education in Ireland. How is it happening? Where is it happening? Who's doing it? And what are they trying to achieve? So rather than focus on possibly publications that I have done in the past, I tried to look at a broader kind of view of the situation in Ireland. So to give you a look at the education system and what's happening in terms of entrepreneurship education, and we can have a discussion around that at the end. So just to start this. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me switch these screens. So you can, everybody see my slides okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I can see, no problem.
Great. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, so thank you for the kind introduction in the first instance about my work in entrepreneurship education. I've been working in teacher education in Ireland for 14 years. But my route into education, working as a teacher educator, was a little bit unusual. So I started my primary degree, my BBS, I had a Bachelor in Business Studies and Entrepreneurship. So my primary qualification was in entrepreneurship, looking at social innovation, looking at setting up a business, etc. And I actually worked in industry for about 8 or 10 years. I worked in a training department in a multinational where we looked at innovative solutions around the communications and telecommunications industries. And it was while I was there, I got interested in e-learnings because we had a number of different sites around Ireland and the UK, and we were trying to figure out how do we deliver training in an effective manner. And that led me to doing a master's in e-learning. And it was really when, after I did my master's in e-learning, I started then working in Dublin City University. And while I was working with students across the teacher education spectrum, I began to think about my primary degree in entrepreneurship and having ideas and being able to act on them, and what were the links that could be found in teacher education. I mean, we want our teachers to be innovators. We want our teachers to like spot problems in education and fix them. We want them to be able to spot opportunities in education and do something about them. So I started to bring together my two areas of expertise in the teaching and entrepreneurship and look at how we could embed it in some of the programs in DCU. So for those of you who aren't familiar, and apologies if this is in any way, I don't mean to be patronizing at all, but just to give you a little bit of sense of where I'm from. So I'm from Ireland, which is a little island on the far west coast of Europe. Here we are here. So we're a population of 5.6 million people. It's the first time Ireland has crossed the population of 5 million since the famine in the 1840s. So the population of Ireland before that famine was up around 8 or 9 million people. And because of emigration and all that happened then, the population dropped. And this is the first time now, that's the 2021 figures, the first time the population has gone past 5 million since then. Our languages are English and Gaeilge, so it's Gaeilge Ormé. So we have a second language in Ireland, Irish. We joined the EU in 1973, and as you're probably aware, there's a huge amount of Irish people around the world. Our diaspora are all over, from the US and England, especially Canada and Australia. So there's Ireland. I am talking to you from somewhere around about here in Dublin, in Ireland. So the Irish economy, up until the 50s and 60s, was predominantly industrial and agricultural. But since then, and especially since our joining the EU, it's moved towards a more knowledge economy, with particular focus on the technology, pharmaceutical, life science, financial services, and agri-business sectors. That's just to give you a sense of the kind of industries that are operating in Ireland at the moment. We have very significant third level qualification attainment in Ireland. 47% of the total population have a third level qualification. But if you look at the younger age bracket, so that people between the ages of 25 and 34, 60% of those have a third level qualification. So back in the early 90s, there was a move by the government to make third level education free. Now, it's free with a small f, in that students still need to be able to buy books and the student accommodation, and universities still require a registration fee, but they abolished tuition fees, which meant that families from all across the societal spectrum could afford to attend universities. And since then, the participation in third level has increased exponentially since then. Also, just to say, at any point, obviously I will take questions at the end, but if anybody has any questions at any time, just ask. Either use the Zoom, raise your hand, or just turn off your mic and ask me a question. I'm happy to take questions at any stage. Okay, so in terms of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship education, since the 90s, the Irish government and successive government policies have really been strong on enacting policies to make Ireland one of the most entrepreneurial nations in the world. That's one of the aspirations of the Irish economy. We're a small, outward-looking economy. We rely on global trade. So the focus was on fostering this entrepreneurial spirit, building initiative and innovative mindset. And the foundation of that was to be built on education and skills. So educating our population and ensuring that they have the skills to act on any opportunities that were identified. Can I just ask, you know, having I said at the start that Irish people tend to speak fast, am I speaking too fast?
It's okay,
Very good.
quite understandable.
Okay, great.
No problem.
Excellent. And I suppose just to highlight, I mean, that's, what is that now, 30, 40 years of 30 something years of government policy, and it's beginning to show a change in attitudes among the Irish population. So the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor is published in Ireland every year or 2 years, and the most recent one in 2019 showed that in terms of the Irish population, their aspirations to be involved in entrepreneurship has gone from 9.8% of the population to 25% of the population have aspirations to be involved in setting up their own business or intrapreneurship. So within organizations to be involved in product and service development. So it seems to be having a positive effect in terms of the different policy and educational initiatives that are happening within the country. So from an educational perspective then, so the Entrepreneurship Forum report was looking at, okay, so what do we need to do from an educational perspective? So the statement, and this is kind of, this is summarized rather than a direct quote from the policy. So it's looking at the potential of young people, and it's critical that we encourage young people and support them at every stage of their educational journey. So looking at education right throughout the spectrum, from primary right the way through to third level education. And the focus of the Irish government should be on developing essential entrepreneurial skills, competencies, and attitudes. And there's a number of strands to try and tackle this, from the formal curriculum, and I'll go through some of the different levels of education in Ireland and where we can see entrepreneurship and the various skills and competencies evidenced in the curriculum, but also through external avenues that feed into our schooling system but aren't directly related to the curriculum. And also social enterprises, the business community, and entrepreneurship champions. And that is something that has been taken on, the entrepreneurship champions taken on in a major way at university level. So trying to identify key individuals in the third level sector and give them the role of entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship champion within the various university campuses. And their job is to seek out individuals who have ideas and help to mentor and nurture those ideas on university campuses. So I'm probably preaching to the converted, and in fact, I only added this slide in this morning just in case. So I know that many of you will be involved in entrepreneurship education, but I just wanted to give a flavor or a sense of what does entrepreneurship and enterprise education mean? What are the potential benefits of it before we move on to how the Irish government defines it? So I suppose the global literature on enterprise education would say that participation in enterprise education or entrepreneurship education has the potential to develop a range of these transferable attributes in terms of the cognitive skills, behavioral skills, and through the affective domain. So changing our attitudes, so changing our ability to think differently, changing our attitudes in terms of developing a mindset, but also in terms of our skills and behaviors. Now, there's a range of them, and I'm sure lots of my esteemed colleagues that are here with me have lots of other literature that they could draw upon. But to give a sense of some of the skills that can be developed by engaging in entrepreneurship education, we've got the likes of Ray and Berdus, who would say that it's about recognizing and exploiting opportunities. So the ability to identify, here is something that is new or innovative, or here is something that is being done in Turkey, for example, but maybe I could try it in Ireland, or it's being done in Ireland, maybe I could try it in Turkey. So the ability to recognize opportunities. Developing the ambition and drive to start something new. Tolerance for ambiguity and uncertainty. So I don't know how things are going to work out, and that's okay. And that's something that I would do an awful lot with my education students, because of the nature of our job and their jobs as teachers. A lot of the time it's about structure, it's about the formality of the process, it's about input in, and your output is your the assignment, and how did the student perform based on a certain set of criteria. And I tend to have to do a lot of work with them around setting tasks that may not have a clearly defined endpoint, or may not have a clearly defined route to that endpoint, and encouraging them to become comfortable with, here's the challenge. You don't know how it's going to work out yet. You don't know how you're going to get there yet. And it's important that you're okay with that. You know, we won't always have the answers to all of our problems in front of us. We need to muddle through, figure things out, get things wrong, and improve as we go. It's about developing creativity and innovation, calculated risk taking, the confidence to propose ideas. So developing the ability to, I suppose, define an idea and present it in an effective manner, but also, you know, the confidence to be able to stand up and deliver that. So I'm not sure if you've heard the expression, you know, you can't separate the dancer from the dance. Have you ever heard that before? So the dancer is a series of moves and steps, but the dancer is the one who performs that. And if you've a bad dancer, you know, doing the steps, it doesn't look as good as if you have a good dancer doing the steps. So this confidence in how you propose your ideas, and this confidence in how you put forward what you're trying to say. And
actually, I do good dance. No problem.
Well, when I come to Turkey, I may hold you to that. Yeah, so the confidence around how you deliver your information is important too. And oftentimes that can be lacking within formal education. So it's very much based on written assignments, testing, assessments, without the delivery of, you know, how do I explain myself? How do I get my points across? How do I get buy-in? How do I bring people on board and gain support, so that people buy into my idea and are willing to come along with me. So if I'm trying something new. And others include like the ability to manage themselves and others and be adaptive to change. So as I said, I'm sure many of you are familiar with those definitions and the potential benefits of engaging with entrepreneurship education. So how does the Irish government define it? So the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment in Ireland defines entrepreneurship as not just being about running a business, which I'm glad to see, that's great. It is about being a willingness and an ability to turn ideas into action. Again, I think that's great to see, because I think a very traditional view of entrepreneurship will be only about starting a business. So I think it's really positive to see this wider, broader definition of entrepreneurship. And I suppose many of these have been drawn from the literature which we just looked at. So it's about creativity, innovation, risk-taking, the ability to plan and manage projects, achieve objectives, be aware of your context. I think that is very good to see in terms of a government policy, trying to imbue this idea that, you know, entrepreneurship is not the same everywhere we look at it. You know, being an entrepreneur or being innovative in education is completely different to being innovative maybe in the tech sector or in the sciences. Being innovative in humanities is different to being innovative possibly if you work in legal profession. So I think that it's good to see that there in terms of, you have to be aware of the context of your industry. You have to be aware of the context of who it is that you work with. What are the challenges, motivations, desires. Oftentimes there's entrenched ideas, so things have always been done this way. And I think it's important that you need to be aware that if you're working in a context where the prevailing wisdom is things have always been done this way, then I think it helps you to understand the road you have ahead. So, you got to identify an opportunity, but there has to be a certain amount of resilience and perseverance there if you're operating in a sector that changes very slowly. That's a slight anecdote there, but and the ability to identify, create, and seize opportunities. So I think that's a healthy definition of what entrepreneurship should be about. And I wanted to present this before I looked at the individual sectors in education, so that you get a sense of this is where it's coming from. So this is the kind of government accepted definition of what entrepreneurship and being entrepreneurial is about. And I think it captures a relatively broad spectrum. And I'm glad to see that it's not focused on the narrow, purely starting a business idea of what entrepreneurship is. Is there any questions? Anybody have any questions or anything like they'd like to add at this, or I'd like to say at this point?
Thank you. We are just listening.
Okay, that's no problem. I'm just checking in.
At the end, actually, we usually ask the questions.
Okay, no problem.
But if somebody wants to ask, no problem.
Okay.
They can raise his or her hand.
Okay, excuse me. So, as I said at the start, what I wanted to do, and I hope that I've pitched this correctly, I wanted to open the conversation today and give a sense of what's happening in Ireland. If anybody wants to talk to me specifically about what I'm doing in my university or specific research areas in third level that I'm doing, or that I'm doing with teachers at second level, absolutely, that would be brilliant to do. But what I was hoping to do today was give a broad sense of what's happening in Ireland. So what does it look like? What are the initiatives that's happening? So what I've done is I've looked at the different sectors in the Irish education system, and I use the term education system loosely because some of it sits slightly outside of formal education. What's happening in terms of teaching and learning of entrepreneurship in Ireland? So I look at our primary sector is from 4 years old to 12 years old. Our post-primary sector is from 13 years old to 18 years old. We have a further education sector, which is after post-primary. It looks at apprenticeships and also short post-leaving cert courses, which sometimes provide a route into third level, other times provide a route into industry. Then we have our third level sector, which is anybody from the age of 18 to 65 could be doing a degree. And then wider society. So there are government agencies that operate programs and courses for individuals who are employed or self-employed or looking to become self-employed. So I thought I'd provide a little sense of what's happening there. And then to wrap things up, I suppose, looking at what's happening in the teacher education space. So we have, as I hope you'll see, there's certain initiatives in each level of education, but how aware are our initial teachers, our new teachers? What are they receiving in terms of education and training and support and mentoring around around embedding entrepreneurship education into the curriculum? Now, I just noticed that when I reformatted this morning, bad typos in my so obviously that's a mistake there. So the P should put it in there. Look, that's better. Okay, so first we start at the primary education. So that's our school kids. So that's between the ages of 4 and 12, roughly. So in each of these sectors, what I've done is I've looked at, okay, so what are the programs that are happening? So being brought into school. So they're not part of the formal curriculum. It's not part of the subjects that the kids are being taught, but these are programs that teachers in schools can access at these various educational levels. So in primary education, we have a number of programs that are available to teachers and their students. The first is the Junior Entrepreneur Program. So their slogan is "Change starts when a child says I'm an entrepreneur." And that's a 12-week program working with kids right the way through from developing an initial idea for a business or a social innovation, right the way through to creating a product or launching a social innovation. So it's a external body that comes into primary schools and works with teachers and their classes to help them through this process. And they've worked with 80,000 students to date. Then we have the Junior Achievement Ireland program, and their mission is to inspire young people to engage with entrepreneurship, STEM, and employability. And they have a slightly different approach. So what they do is they bring in, so as long as once the school signs up, members of the civic and business community then come into the classroom and jointly deliver the content with the teacher, bringing in their real life, real world experiences and helping to assess the students using real world activities. So you might have somebody coming in from a social enterprise, and if they're talking about, let's say, civic society. So they might look at a social enterprise and say, well, look, these are the problems that are facing our local community. So how would you as a class address that problem? So they're using the curriculum that's being completed with the teacher to try and address problems that are brought in from outside. And they've worked with 47,000 students to date. Then we have the BizWorld initiative. So this is about promoting entrepreneurial skills for young people. And it's workshops looking at dealing with later levels, so 10 to 13-year-olds. Here. So that's kind of the far end of this primary education. So far end of that and the beginning of secondary education. So they're slightly older primary school kids. So they deliver workshops on what it's like to work in, you know, a small business, or what it's like to work in a enterprise. And they do workshops around creativity, collaboration, communication, teamwork, and negotiation. So there is others, but that's a sense of some of the external people that will come into primary education in Ireland. If we look at in the curriculum, so looking at the actual primary school curriculum, it is less evident what is happening in terms of entrepreneurial learning and enterprise education. So one of the key skills identified at primary education is the ability to think critically and apply learning to develop flexibility and creativity. So we can see elements of creativity in the curriculum there. The next then is around how students learn. So they're stimulated to learn with each other and collaboratively work together to expose themselves to their own ideas, but also the ideas of their peers. But as you can see, I think compared to the definition of what it means to be entrepreneurial and what's happening, what's being brought in from the outside, and then what's actually in the curriculum, it's probably not as evident there at primary level that there's, you know, real moves being made to develop entrepreneurial skills at primary level. So then at post-primary level, so just a reminder, so post-primary level is 13 to 18 years. So that's essentially until we would move to into third level education. So at post-primary level, there's a number of different initiatives again happening, as we have the Student Enterprise Program. So that's an initiative between the local enterprise offices, and I'll come back to them later on, and post-primary schools. So the students engage with this program for a full academic year. So it runs through from our academic year is September through to May. So September, let's say 2021 through to May 2022. And the students set up and run their own business for a full academic year. And the local enterprise office comes in and works with the school, the teachers and the students, and provides them with mentoring and education. And the end result of that is that students compete in these regional and national competitions. So they submit their final product or their final service, and it's evaluated by a panel of judges. Then second, we have the young social innovators, and I've actually done a bit of work with young social innovators in terms of research work, identifying the impact that they have had on the second level system in Ireland. So their mission is very much focused on the social aspect. So empowering young people to come up with innovative solutions to societal challenges. So not so much on the business side of things, they're looking at social enterprise. So they have programs for junior and senior cycle, and students work in teams to implement these innovative solutions. Again, it's a year-long program. So the students come to the young social innovators offices and take part in training days, learning days, and helping the team at Young Social Innovators help to teach students how to, navigate their way through moving from here's the problem I've identified to what am I going to do about it.
Dear Peter, can I ask one question?
Of course you can, yeah.
Are you trying to put this entrepreneurship issue in the every unit in the curriculum program, or it is general?
So what I'm trying to show is currently what's happening is if you look at primary level, there's little evidence apart from, so these entrepreneurship programs are external bodies that come in. So if you imagine I'm a teacher, okay? So just, every day I'm coming in, I'm teaching English, Irish, maths, history, geography, science, etc. But I can contact young social innovators and say, I would like my students to participate in this program. And then over the academic year, my students will work with young social innovators to tackle these problems identified. So that's what these programs are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understood.
Okay. And then another external, so outside of the formal curriculum, would be the BT Young Scientist and Technology Exhibition, and that's been going in Ireland since 1965. And this is a national competition for innovators to tackle business and social problems. So essentially you have teachers who mentor their students through coming up with a technological or scientific innovation, and they submit these innovations to be part of these final awards. The BT Young Scientist is a big deal in Ireland. So this would have national media coverage. So it happens once a year. There's a huge, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a show in one of Dublin's biggest venues where all the students come and the public can come in and ask them questions about what their innovation is. Yeah, there's huge media coverage, there's big prize money. So that's one of the biggest competitions in this kind of arena or sector. Now, in terms of the actual curriculum, so again, just to say those initiatives are...
Excuse me.
Yes?
I want to learn. All students take the young social innovation programs, or some of them are taking there?
So that's a great question. So these are optional. So they happen outside of the formal curriculum. Okay. These are ideas that that teachers can engage with if they want. And I suppose that's what I'm going to get to towards the end. So this is one of the issues, because so some students are getting it, some aren't. So that's a really good question. I'm going to get to that.
Thank you.
So this is what's discussed in the formal curriculum. So our post-primary education, our post-primary education from 13 to 18 is divided into two stages. So you have junior cycle, and that runs from first to third year. So they've first year, second year, third year, that's junior cycle, and then they move to a senior cycle curriculum. And they're two separate curriculums. They're managed differently. They change at different times. And if you look at the junior curriculum was reformed in 2015. And a lot of what's talked about in the new core skills that are trying to be developed at junior cycle lead into the development of these entrepreneurial skills. Now, again, I'll talk a little bit at the end about how clear is it that these are being defined as entrepreneurial skills is a different conversation. But the type of skills that the curriculum is espousing or wants to be developed definitely have links to the entrepreneurial individual, excuse me. So with things like decision making, being confident, achieving goals, presenting, discussing and debating, negotiating, being imaginative, exploring options and alternatives, taking action, developing relationships, being curious, and thinking creatively and critically. So I think if all of those words that are highlighted in that purple color, if we took that and put it back up here in that definition, I think we would agree that a lot of that fits into what we want to develop in terms of entrepreneurial learning. But as I'll come to at the end, I think that the question that needs still to be asked in Ireland is, are teachers aware that they are developing entrepreneurship? Are they doing it in a sequential way? Are students aware that they are developing themselves to be entrepreneurial, or is it very like piecemeal? Is it one day we'll do an assessment that evaluates, let's say, discussion or debating? During that review in 2015 of the junior cert curriculum, there was a complete overhaul of the examination criteria and the modes of assessment. So it was moved much more towards continuous assessment. There is a final exam, but much more towards they are assessed weekly, monthly, build up a portfolio of work, complete projects in teams and individually, use technology. So create, video presentations, create online delivery of assignments. So a move away from the kind of formal written assessment that would have been there before. Then if we look at the senior cycle, so this would be 5th and 6th year, so the last 2 years of their secondary education. So again, you see lots here that you would readily identify with entrepreneurship education. So identifying and analyzing problems, exploring alternatives, solving problems, thinking imaginatively, being innovative and taking risks, discussing, debating, arguing, performing in a variety of different ways. I think again, if you were to go back to what we're trying to develop in entrepreneurial learning, a lot of that would fit in there. But the question, and again, I will get to this at the end, the question is, how is this structured in the day-to-day teaching at post-primary level? And is it framed as entrepreneurial learning? Are we developing people who are entrepreneurial, or are we just talking about, you need to achieve your own goals in life? And I don't know if the link is as clear maybe as it could be. In terms of third level, you've lots of different things going on. This is just a selection. So you have the Enactus competition at third level, where groups of students can choose. Again, I think it was, apologies if I don't pronounce your name correctly. Was it Ali Riza was asking about, do all students take these? So these slides where I'm talking about entrepreneurship programs, these are optional. So all students in third level can apply to create a team and take part in this Enactus competition. And they're guided then by a team of educators and business leaders. And they look at their own community, assess if there's issues or problems that need to be solved, and they put together a project proposal as part of this Enactus competition. And again, this one will be a big deal in universities. So universities will put in a number of teams, and if DCU's team won the Enactus competition for the year, it would be publicized all over the media that it was DCU students that won, or Trinity College, or whoever it was. In various universities, and I'm sure it's the same with yourselves, in Turkey, there's lots of clubs and societies. We have entrepreneurship societies, social innovation societies. A lot of universities now are running innovation awards. So they'll run annually. They'll put out a call to say, any students that come up with an innovative solution to a problem that's being faced within your local community, submit it to us, and there's prize money and prizes and trips away and stuff like that. And I know UCD and DCU run innovation awards for staff and students. So if there's any innovative ideas, it helps to motivate people to turn them into action. And there is some bridging programs. So DCU and DKIT, which is Dundalk Institute of Technology, have these programs where their university programs directly link with external businesses and social enterprises, and get the businesses to come in and co-deliver lectures, help to design the assignment brief. I know a colleague from Galway Mayo Institute of Technology. He's an engineer, and he brought in a local engineering company, and they essentially set an engineering challenge for the students, and that was the assignment. So rather than being a purely academic exercise or a project maybe that the lecturer came up with themselves that was based on probably sound engineering principles, but this option was actually a real problem that was brought in by an engineering company. This is something we're trying to solve right now. Will you help us? And that kind of brings that real world into the classroom. There's innovation centers. So I know that DCU have the Invent Center and UCD have the Nova Center, where they identify what's happening within the university community, if there's innovative opportunities, and then they provide supports to members of staff or student companies or student societies that have identified a potential idea to work on, and they will provide them with mentoring. Sometimes if it's successful, they provide them with office space, financial support. So they help to, that whole idea of the spin out. So if something has been started within the university, those innovation centers help to turn those things into a reality and make them somewhat sustainable. I've been involved in a number of educator programs at third level. So I'm involved in the Campus Entrepreneurship Educators Network, which is a network of individuals who are interested and teaching and researching in the area of entrepreneurship education all across the island of Ireland, north and south. And we had some funding from the Higher Education Authority in Ireland, and we developed a level 9, so a master's level module in enterprise and entrepreneurial learning. And we delivered that this was pre-pandemic, so we delivered it in a blended format. So it was 80% online and 20% face-to-face workshops. And we worked with colleagues from right across the country, right across the curriculum spectrum. So we had engineers, we had artists, we had teacher educators, we had people who work in the sciences, we had humanities people, so we had communications, people working in media. And what we worked with them was over the space of an academic year, looking at how do I embed enterprise and entrepreneurial learning into my curriculum. So examining their existing university modules, university programs, looking at learning outcomes, and trying to identify how can I use my existing content and embed into the curriculum entrepreneurial learning and develop these characteristics, skills, competencies, etc. with my students. Now, this was really successful. So we had a full cohort for both years that we've run the program to date. We tried to keep it small, so that it was 35 each time. And we've built up a great network now of individuals across the country who are trying new things. And we come together on a regular basis and try and bring together our learning and what we now understand and what we've developed in terms of embedding these learning outcomes in our academic curriculums. So that's one program that we do. So that's 10 ECTS. I'm purposely not reading everything that's on the screens. I'm just trying to have a conversation with you. So I hope it's okay. I hope this is what you were hoping I would do. Then there's another program that I'm involved in with the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, which is a digital badge in entrepreneurship education. So again, the purpose of this module, this is fully online with some mentoring workshops. So the students work their way through the content in an online manner. And then myself and my colleagues meet with them periodically to discuss and ask them how they're getting on and if they're having challenges embedding entrepreneurship in their curriculum. So this is a short online digital badge. As I said, it's about developing awareness of entrepreneurship education and how it applies in business and non-business contexts. So what are the key skills that you would be interested in developing? How would you go about developing them in your individual curriculum? And that's only run for, we only launched that in March, was it March, February or March 2021. So that was a really exciting for us to do. It took us a long time to develop the online materials, but we had a really good cohort of students. We had 25 students. They're all really engaged. And I suppose personally, my reflections on that were the key was the mentoring part. So
what about the prizes? It is free of charge or there is some cost?
So this one was free of charge. This one here, the first time we ran it, we had support from the Higher Education Authority in Ireland. So everybody, their fees were covered. The second time we ran it, it was 800 euros, this one. This one is free of charge because it's run through this national forum. So we essentially developed a module and hosted on this national forum website. So as long as you're a member of a higher education institution, you can access those programs for free. In terms of in the curriculum, I would say, look, this is just a snapshot. These aren't exact percentages, but looking across the curriculum, the focus on entrepreneurial learning and entrepreneurship education is still heavily weighted towards and still heavily owned by the business schools. And you would certainly see a lot of entrepreneurship research still happening, still being focused on business startups, and lots of really interesting work. I mean, that's clearly a very important part of entrepreneurship. There's lots of interesting work around in Ireland happening around female entrepreneurship, around migrant and immigrant entrepreneurship, but most of it is focused on starting a business. You would have entrepreneurship modules in the third level system in courses on ICT and technology and in the sciences around pharmaceuticals and medical innovations. And you would have some in the humanities looking at social innovation programs. I know there's one in DCU in the School of Languages, actually, which looks at social innovation and being entrepreneurial in identifying new ways of teaching languages and new ways of integrating cultures. And there's work that I do on educational innovation, but predominantly speaking, I think you would still see the majority of teaching, so the majority of modules that are clearly defined as entrepreneurship happening in the business schools, with some happening outside in the sciences and ICT, etc. I'm just conscious of time. I want to leave a bit of time at the end for some questions. What do I have left? Yeah, okay.
You have 4 or 5 minutes. Then
okay.
We can discuss.
Okay. So I think the wider society piece maybe is not of as much interest to colleagues on this call. This would be for anybody who's outside the education system, adults looking to start a business, adults looking to engage with enterprise. And we have a series of local enterprise offices that offer training programs and mentorship. What's happening at teacher education? So I think looking back at those, what's in the curriculum slide. So at post-primary, what's in the curriculum? At primary, what's in the curriculum? At third level, what's in the curriculum? I think there certainly is consideration being given to the development of entrepreneurial skills, or there's certainly strong links between the core skills that have been identified as what we would like to develop at primary and especially secondary education. But I would argue that there's still only like sporadic evidence of its integration into teacher education programs in Ireland. And it's difficult to see how these are being developed within the subject curricular areas. So for example, if I am a science teacher in Ireland, I know that the core skills that are trying to be developed include confidence, the ability to propose ideas, innovation, but it's more difficult to see how the actual science curriculum is addressing those concerns. So I would say that in some ways, these are still aspirational, the skills to be developed. And what I would say as somebody who's interested in the totality of entrepreneurial learning is, are they being framed in the context of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial learning? So is the system dealing with this as a core concept, or is there more a selection of different skills and ideas that are being developed in lots of different ways, but there's no kind of coherent view of how this might be developed in the sector? There is some stuff happening in teacher education. UCD have a professional development in creativity and innovation for education, which is a level 9 program. I believe that I run the only entrepreneurship in education module on a degree program in Ireland. So on our BSc, our Bachelor in Science in Education and Training, I have a module called Entrepreneurship in Education, and I work with my students so they learn about embedding entrepreneurial learning in their teaching and reflect on how that works and how you would identify learning outcomes and developing that with their students. And I think it's still the only one. I'm working with colleagues on our post-primary program at the moment on developing a module, still seeking approval on that. So there is some content being delivered at a teacher education stage, but I suppose, as I'm saying here, I think there's still elements that are at an aspirational stage. And that's kind of what I'm summarizing here. So just that the primary sector, there's a good level of implementation from outside programs. So the gentleman who asked me earlier on, teachers can choose and select for their students to be part of these enterprise programs or the junior enterprise program. There's a good selection of that available. The curriculum has some links to entrepreneurial skills, but these integrated approaches are low. At post-primary, again, there's a lot of offerings of these programs where teachers can choose for their students to go on. The formal curriculum contains lots of links to entrepreneurial skills, lots of talk of recognizing opportunities, acting on opportunities, and the junior cert assessment has been reformed to be more CA based. But again, evidence of integrated approaches in our teacher education is quite low. And I would say the same for third level. So there's lots of programs available. But entrepreneurship education, I would say, primarily resides and still is owned by business schools. So I hope I timed that roughly correctly there for you. Thank you very much for listening. As I said, I was a little unsure how to pitch this. I wanted to provide a starting point for a conversation that will hopefully continue. So I wanted to give you a sense of what was happening in Ireland. So happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you too much. You gave very, very useful information about us. Now, the colleagues probably will ask some question to you.
Okay.
Excuse
Yes, please.
me. Excuse me. I would like to learn that you gave us some skills and aims of the program, but can you give us some example about in teacher education program when you are implementing some of the content? Can you give us? You explained us it is not possible. Just you gave us some aims, objectives of the course, but what I am learning, what I want to learn. Can you give us some example in digital education program you implemented?
Are you talking here?
Evet. Okay.
Is it this?
Yes.
Okay. Evet. Okay.
Is this the one you're talking about?
Okay.
So what I do with these students is from a very broad, I come in from a very broad perspective. So they are doing all of their modules on curriculum development. They're doing all of their modules on like subject content. And what I do with them is I ask them to identify problems that they can see in the education system, or opportunities.
But can you give us some example of the problem? What problem they bring you?
Oh, so some of the problems that they come up with are route to third level education. So we're based on a point system. So they try and come up with solutions to the point system. They have suggested things like interviewing. They've suggested portfolios of work. They have suggested giving different weightings to different subjects. Other issues that they have come up with are around the use of technology. So obviously before the pandemic, they felt that in the university there was all of these tools available, so the likes of Moodle, but they were really underutilized. So they identified some opportunities about how they could participate more actively using technology. So set up groups on Loop that they might be able to set up these discussion forums and collaborate with each other on that. And what I try and do then later in the module is we flip that on its head and we say, okay, so now that you've experienced what it's like to identify a problem, and we work right the way through to presenting their solution. Then there's actually like a follow-on module where we look at different subjects in the curriculum and we say, how could you build in some of those skills into this curriculum? So there's a wide range of students on this program. Some of them will go on to work in further education. So we take module specifications and we try and build in entrepreneurial learning. So they'll pick some key skills. So let's say it's the ability to negotiate or the ability to present your ideas and take questions. So they might take a look at an existing module specification and say, okay, let's build in a learning outcome that addresses the curriculum, but also helps the students to identify, to build these skills of the confidence to propose ideas, for example.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mustafa Hocam.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Peter, for the presentation. It was a very nice overview of what's happening in Ireland. We get a kind of understanding what's happening in your country. I have a question about, do you have any kind of information or research data indicating that is there any kind of relationship between those students who have some interest or a positive attitudes toward research-based teaching, or inquiry-based teaching, or carrying out some kind of research while they are taking education, being an entrepreneur? Is there any kind of evidence-based, data or any kind of research results that supports that entrepreneurship is positively affected from the inquiry-based teaching or those kind of things? Why I'm asking this, because in Turkey, rather than using directly entrepreneurship education or programs in Turkey, there are all those small NGO programs or initiatives. We have rather large investment into developing student interest towards science through the governmental organizations such as TÜBİTAK. TÜBİTAK has a lot of support providing to the teachers and also the students at almost at all levels, from the primary to the third level too as well. So I'm wondering, is it possible to develop student interest or skills to being an entrepreneur in the future if we improve their inquiry-based skills or research skills or interest towards the research? Thank you.
So I think that that's a great question. First of all, the short answer is there. In an Irish context, there is nothing published in terms of an evidence base for that. So that's my short response. So that I'm aware of. Firstly, there's a lot of work happening and has been happening for a number of years in Ireland on inquiry-based learning and those type of approaches. And maybe this is back to this entrepreneurship as a concept that I was talking about. So it's almost like there's inquiry-based learning, and then you have people who are proponents of entrepreneurship education, and that, you know, it's important to be curious and inquisitive, but that connection hasn't been made, certainly in a research sense, where we can say, like, track a student's interest over time. So if they've participated in inquiry-based learning throughout their second level education, is there a knock-on effect in the future? That hasn't been done. And I absolutely appreciate what you're saying about, so there's different ways of doing this. And it seems to me that the approach you're talking about is by piquing a student's curiosity and interest in the scientific expertise and exercise of scientific investigation, then there is a chance that later they will find an opportunity, find an idea that they would, you know, it's that motivation side of things that they would like to act on. And again, in Ireland, I don't see evidence of that. I'm not saying that it's not happening, and inquiry-based teaching is happening, but from a research perspective, there is, I don't see any publications, research that's linking those two areas together.
I understand. And the second question is about how it is related with the technology-based society. I mean, because I know that the Ireland economy is mostly based on technology and, you know, the industry like chemical industry or the pharmaceutical industry is very well developed in Ireland. Is there any kind of, perhaps your understanding or your observation, is there any kind of relationship with societal support from the industry, or the level of technology developed in one country or the level of technological industry developed in one country affects the people or the future citizens' entrepreneurship skills? Because in Turkey, I suspect that through the education system, we are demolishing people's entrepreneurship skills rather than developing it. Because I see that in the industrial area, in the industry, the business area, those people are mostly seen as an entrepreneur. They are not well educated. Majority of them are not coming from the third level education. They just take the basic education and that's it. So there's a kind of, I think, the incorrect relationship between the education and the entrepreneurship in Turkey. This is just my inclination, my understanding, my feeling. There's no data that supports this.
There's a couple of things. There's a couple of things that you've mentioned that, again, I'd be similar to you, as in these will be my thoughts and reflections on the impact, as opposed to, you know, evidence based on research. So having a conversation with you about it, I think the first, just to go back to the first one, that the Ireland's tech industry and the size of the tech industry. I would argue that I wouldn't be confident about the positive impact that would have on Ireland's entrepreneurial culture, because the majority of the tech industry that exists in Ireland is foreign direct investment. So it's the likes of Google, Facebook. So it's absolutely wonderful to have that employment within Ireland, but I don't think that it contributes directly to entrepreneurship, or certainly the tech industry in Ireland is not big because of entrepreneurship. The tech industry in Ireland is big because of, you know, large multinationals that exist in Dublin. And I would share your let's say concerns in some way, that how does that promote entrepreneurship if there is, you know, large numbers of people, you know, graduating from college and going straight into work for a multinational. It's possible that through working in an innovative organization like that, like for the likes of Google, I mean, they ideate all the time and they're coming up with different products and services. It's possible that experience will you know, develop or encourage an entrepreneurial spirit within the employees, who may go on in the future to create their own tech companies. I don't know that, but certainly the existence of the large tech industry in Ireland wouldn't be a result, I don't think, of the Irish entrepreneurs, while of course there is some, but a lot of it is taken up with the larger multinationals. And onto your comment about education, educating out the entrepreneurial ability of people. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the standardized testing, I suppose, model, or the standard assessment model of education systems, they tend to favor what do you remember? What can you tell me, rather than what's your ideas? What can you do? Absolutely. I was trying to highlight, I suppose, the junior certificate curriculum in Ireland as it's the most recent revision that's happened in 2015, and there is real efforts being made. It's still only like change is still underway, but there's definitely real efforts in Ireland being made from the junior cycle curriculum to change how we assess people. So it is more about project-based work, continuous assessment, build a portfolio, and I think education in that way is certainly more positive towards developing individuals' entrepreneurial aspirations or their abilities in that way, because it's certainly not a negative or won't destroy their entrepreneurial tendencies in the same way that possibly, you know, formal assessment and standardized testing might.
Thank you.
Actually, I have trouble to pronounce this entrepreneurship word. I believe it is the problems for all Turkish or all foreign people. Actually, we should change this word first.
Yes.
Very long, spelling is very difficult. Yeah, many, we have trouble in Turkey. I don't know in Ireland.
Interesting observation on that from an education point of view. So the module that I developed on entrepreneurship in education, that one there, that's, I think it might be 10 years old or so. And initially, attitudes with teachers and with education students, they were quite negative about the word entrepreneurship. So they basically thought, why am I doing a business module? Why am I doing a module about starting a business when I'm training to be a teacher or an educator? And I considered changing the name of the module to Innovation in Education and Training, Creativity and Innovation in Education and Training, but I stuck with it because I do think that entrepreneurship is more than innovation. It's all of those other things around opportunity recognition and building confidence and proposing ideas. But over time, now students don't say that to me. So 10 years ago they did, but now they don't. So I think attitudes, and I suppose this would go back to maybe the second slide, attitudes are changing in Ireland to what entrepreneurship is. And it's not just a concept for people who want to start a business. It can be social innovators. It can be about being entrepreneurial. So being an entrepreneur within an organization. So I think that the attitudes are changing in that regard. But you just reminded me of that, how things have changed.
Is there any other question? Don't hesitate, please, you can ask. Because very, very important issue. No? From everyone. Keçeci is asking one question.
Thank you
Are
very
you able
much.
to read it?
Oh, sorry, I didn't see anything in the chat box there. Sorry.
I can read it for you. What percentage of?
Oh yeah, I have it here. I have it here.
Yeah, no problem.
So is it a popular? I think. Is it Gonka? Is that how I pronounce your name? Hi, anyway, and thanks for the question. So a lot of the providers will publish their statistics for who has participated in their programs. So as you can see here, so they have 80,000 students to date. The Junior Achiever Ireland program is 47,000 students to date, and there's a couple of figures throughout this. Percentage-wise, I would have to work that out for you. I don't have that figure right now. But what I will say, and I think it's a really important question, and is it Ali Riza? Sorry, I'm trying. Asked earlier, and I think the problem with these approaches that are parachuted in is you're always reliant on a teacher who is interested in entrepreneurship, or a teacher who is interested in developing these skills in their students. So if I send my daughter to the school down the road and the teacher she has is Isa, and he is interested in entrepreneurship, and she goes on the junior entrepreneur program, and she loves it, great. 2 years later, I send the twins to the same school, and Isa has moved to a different school, and the new teacher, Peter, has no interest. So they don't get to participate in this. So I know why you're asking the question about percentages. I don't have the answer off the top of my head. I would have to come back to you on that. And I'm happy to come back on anything if anybody has questions. But I think that the bigger question is it shouldn't be a percentages game, really, because it should be about students should get to experience education equally, not based on the kind of external desires of a teacher, that a teacher likes this subject or likes to engage with young social innovators or likes to engage with the BT young scientists, because then you've got this inequality in educational experience and potentially like educational attainment in that if a student really buys into a project like this, it can spark interest, motivation, and engagement for the remainder of their school time, because they can feel like they belong in a system and they've got something really interesting out of it. So yeah, I suppose maybe one of the things I was trying to give an overview today, so maybe it didn't come across in some of what I was saying, but
thank you very much. Time is quite over.
Okay.
I hope next year or next years we will invite you to Turkey, and you will get opportunity to meet Turkish researchers and educators. I hope.
I would very much like that.
Actually, there are a few people now they are studying or working about this entrepreneurship subject. I hope number of the researchers could increase. Then Turkey also be aware of the many issues now going on all over the world about this entrepreneurship subject. Thank you very much. You share your time for us. You woke up very early this morning for us. Now you can go again to sleep, no problem. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope we will see each other in future and face to face we talk about many issues.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks.
again.
Bye.
See you soon.
See you soon.